So first tour went out to Germany. So my first tour was at Laarbruch in Germany on the reconnaissance. So a new unit formed by the tornado. Jaguars were replaced. So we flew what we call the GL-1A, which is A specified. It was reconnaissance aircraft. So it had built-in reconnaissance. And that's fantastic, flying around. New squadron. I was an ab initio, so the first new non-qualified or non-history pilot. So no hours before me arrived there on the squadron. And another chap joined me called Neil Johnson. And then we had Wayne Hague and Jerry Spencer. So the four of us, who we still meet, saw them, the guys in February, were the ab initios on that squadron for the first 2 years. So we were coffee boy, broom sweeps. We were the dogs for the squadron for about 2.5 years when no one else arrived who was junior. But that was a fantastic time for us. We flew 3 times a day, most days. We were just flying hours. But in that time, we used to go to Deci in Sardinia to do weapons. So even though we were a reconnaissance squadron, we still had our full weapons complement and training. We used to go to Deci, and we used to do an exercise called is it Purple something, where you'd go to different NATO bases around Europe, and there's parts of the servicing. So you'd land at, say, Kiel, so that the German Navy could service your aircraft. And the idea was that any aircraft flying around during the Cold War could land at any base and at least get fueled and sent back home. So we went to the Canadian bases at La or Solingen, the French bases down near Trier. We'd go to the Dutch bases. With any of the NATO bases, you book in and you say, today I'm going to do a sortie, I'm going to end up in Volkel in Holland. And you go to Holland, you'd land, you'd have lunch, they'd turn your jet around, refuel it, they'd get a tick in the box, and you'd go home. So we used to do a lot of NATO traveling. I've been to States for weapons training, been to Red Flag, been to Canada as well for flying training in Canada, been out to the Far East as well, been to, we used to Elon Osprey out of Butterworth and Penang, out over the Far East. And then traveling Iceland, basically every NATO country probably at some point or other. Did a lot of traveling. I suppose it's always the place that's going to stand out is Gulf War II, which we operated out of Al Udeid in Qatar. Okay, so it's always going to be the highlight of any aviator's career is actually doing the thing that you've joined to do, is actually go to war. It was nothing like Gulf War I, which was quite horrendous. It was a lot tamer, I'd say, and that's the reality of it. But going to war as a leader of a formation, so you lead your formation. So I was flying with a guy called Hugh Smith, who was my pilot, and we led our formation from our squadron. I was on 617, the Dan Buster squadron at the time, and we led our formation on our missions. And that is a highlight of your career. And if you're an aviator, to actually cross that border, leading your formation at night, to deliver your weapons against an enemy, and come home safely and bring your boys home, that is the highlight of you. That's your job, that's your role, and that's your responsibility. And actually, it was a joy to do that. And actually, whilst it was a war, no one's ever going to glorify that. The fact that you could go do your job in a professional way. People say that like it's something which we don't, but there are times where I saw some other nations who are probably less professional than the Brits. Not because I think the individuals wanted to be, but they had slightly different approaches to who the enemy was. The enemy is the enemy. But the enemy is the person who's trying to kill me. I'm going to try and defend and defeat him. But there are civilians there, and there are other people who are non-combatants who don't need to get involved in this if at all possible. So there are some attitudes and behaviours, I think, which have changed over the years for the better, I'd suggest as well.